Hey Ian, you ready?
You bet I am. What are we talking about tonight? And talk about guns?
If it's not a 30 cal, I'm not in.
Jeez, mate, that's not very inclusive. Have you seen Jono?
Hey Jono, you ready?
Well, God knows where he is, mate. He's probably caught up in the neighbour's wire again. You ready to go? Let's do this.
Mate, I'm ready. Let's crank it up.
Righto then. Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Hunters Campfire, where we're going to talk about all things hunting and the great outdoors. And we'll probably throw in a few tips along the way.
You want a tip? Say it once, say it 1,000 times. Goats love rocks.
Or a few things about deer. Mark, what do you reckon about deer?
As a deer hunter, I love hunting pigs.
Well, that's about as useful as I expected it to be. Oh, check it out. Here comes Jono. He's being chased by the neighbour's dog.
Okay guys, let's get this started. Welcome to the Hunters Campfire. Pull up a chair, get comfortable. It's time for the Hunters Campfire.
Good evening, listeners, and good evening, Mark and Errol. How are we both this evening?
Yes.
Well, I'm a bit confused because that's not Jono.
It's not Jono.
I'm perfect. Just waiting to get into it.
We've been looking forward to this for some time, and most of our listeners, if not all of our listeners, will know exactly who you are, Errol. And yes, we are missing Jono this evening. We've replaced Jono with Errol this evening because we're going to talk about Sambar. That's not to say that Jono doesn't know a thing or two about Sambar, but he's got other things on this evening and couldn't join us. But we'll carry on anyway. We're excited to launch this segment. We've been talking to Errol for a little while about it, and we want to introduce the segment that we're calling More Secrets of the Sambar with Errol Mason. And the concept of this segment is that we're hoping that Errol will join us on a semi-regular basis to talk about different subjects in relation to Sambar, if not other deer species as well, because a lot of the subjects that we talk about cross species. But there's a lot going on in the Sambar world, and we're all very keen to head down to Victoria and hunt Sambar ourselves. So we're going to ask lots of cool questions and get some interesting answers from the godfather of Sambar hunting. So we're really excited. Mark, what do you think?
Oh, look, I think it's great. We've always wanted to share information, and we're just getting better at it. Recently, we've recorded our 100th podcast. So this is the new, 101 and beyond. And Errol's going to bring a whole new body of knowledge to deer hunting. So we're getting, as our podcasts grow, the amount of information on what we're talking about is growing as well, which is fantastic. So I'm quite excited by this, and I'm actually a little, I suppose, selfishly want to get some of this information for me as well. It's not so much about being sharing the information. I want to learn something on this one as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right. Well, we have a topic for the night. There's been a lot of information going around social media recently about shooting more hinds. We've spoken to lots of different people about the subject off air, I guess, and it's a subject that's popping up in the socials, like we've said, about why you might want to take more hinds. There's been a lot of debate about the use of helicopter hunting, not even hunting, helicopter culling out and about, whether it's in Sambar country or fallow or red deer or the other. And they claim to be using helicopters to cull animals because there's too many of them around. Whether we believe that or not, that's what's going on. But there is a place for hunters to help reduce those numbers, and there's lots of reasons why we should do that. So, Errol, we're all keen on your thoughts about this. There's lots to the subject. Let's just start with your initial thoughts on the reasons why we might start to take more hinds when we're out in the bush.
Okay, the first thing I'd say is there's no actual research about how many deer there are in our forest. There's no research as to what percentage of those deer are hinds. So all I can draw upon is my own observations and direct observations of other hunters, which I guess in science is called anecdotal data. Now, some of the anecdotal data I've heard from hunters who I know well, who've done my training course, etc., and they're good hunters. They're not mugs when it comes to shooting a big stag. And one in particular is Clint Collins from Canberra, who's done my course, read the 3 books, and he has shot 3, really big trophy stags. Now, some time ago, probably 18 months ago, Clint told me he'd been away for a week's hunting. He saw, it was near Omeo in Victoria, he saw 150 hinds. He did not see one stag.
Wow.
Not one stag, but 150 hinds. Now that, you don't need to research something to the nth degree to know that there's an enormous number of hinds, but the stags clearly have been shot. The reason they're not there isn't because they're so smart. They're simply being killed. And another guy goes, who I know, went into the Warrangata. He was in the Warrangata, I think he said 4 or 5 days. He saw 46 hinds, not one stag. Then I hear other anecdotal stuff around Eildon where blokes will see 30 hinds walk out into a paddock in the midday sun, a bare paddock, no structure, no cover, ribs stuck together, and they're feeding at midday, in the midday sun. Now, Sambar are light aversive. Sambar are known for just how elusive they are. However, in the hierarchy of needs, food is number 1. So when they are starving, security is just thrown out the window. And clearly, for these deer, 30 of them to walk out into the midday sun with their ribs stuck together, they were starving. It just goes to show you too many, not one stag. So again, too many hinds. Hinds clearly exceeding the carrying capacity of the habitat to the point where they were so starving, they just didn't care about security. So I think you can keep on with these anecdotal observations. Another one, the late Dick Power from Eildon. Before he passed, Dick told me that there were so many deer around Eildon that were exceeding the habitat to such an extent that the size of the animals was actually getting smaller by weight and size. Now that, in wildlife or deer biology, that's a clear indication of nutritional deficiency, which only comes about due to the number of animals clearly exceeding the habitat. So no doubt there is too many hinds. No doubt hunters need to shoot more.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, Mark, you were about to jump in there and I've jumped in front of you. One of the questions that you and I, one of the topics you and I discussed the other day, Errol, was that there's enough scientific data, I guess, out there that says that there's close enough to 50% males and 50% females born every year. It's close enough, within a few percentage either direction. Seeing groups of hinds like that, but not seeing many males in there, surely there's something else other than just hunters knocking off 50% of the animals, just males. That doesn't, I mean, it's bizarre to me that people will go into the bush and see a buttonbuck or, a tiny little spiker. Do you think it's all hunters just knocking those off, and that's what's producing these big groups of hinds that are left behind?
Well, the answer to that, I guess, is simply to look at, what other natural predators are there that would have been male selective. The only other natural predator we have are dingoes, wild dogs. Now, clearly, dingoes aren't going to be selective on males. they're going to prey on males and females. So that can't be the reason. I've got no doubt it's because hunters are selecting males in preference to females. I've got no doubt that's the issue. And this thing in the human psychic, this fascination with the antlers, it's understandable. It goes back to all the previous human species. If you go and look at the cave paintings all around the world, I think the oldest have been carbon dated to at least 30,000 years. Most of what you'll see is the male animal painted quite ornately with big antlers, or in the case of bovine, big horns. You don't see the females. You see males. You see antlers. It doesn't matter whether those cave paintings are in Spain, in France, in Africa. It's a fascination by hunters with antlers, which makes males targeted. And the other thing about it is, I think we did discuss this too, the hinds really are a greater challenge to harvest than stags are. The hinds are clearly to my mind, from all my direct observations of hinds and stags, I believe hinds are a superior challenge.
Let's hold that thought for a second, Errol. Mark, do you have a question?
Yeah, I suppose one observation is that, in fact, I suppose if you're talking about predation, a predator, a dingo, would actually go for hinds before it would go for a stag, because it'd go for a smaller animal because it's a lot easier to manage. It's going to go for it's going to go for a smaller. I mean, that's what predators do. They go for younger animals and they go for smaller animals. So, yeah, dingoes, I suppose, would less likely to go for a big stag than they would go for a hind, because it's going to, it's an easier takedown for them. I suppose, but the question I've got in regards to hind behaviour, I mean, I observe lots of red deer and to a lesser extent fallow. And so in the red deer cycle, there is a significant period of the year where the hinds are separate from the stags, and except of course generally the first year stags that still haven't kind of left the matriarchy. Is that the same with Sambar? Do the hinds tend to raft up, or will you in more normal times will you see stags with hinds outside of the the breeding cycle?
No. Can you just hold that one?
Sure.
Just go back to the dingo. There's plenty of direct observations of dingoes killing sambar. Plenty. And quite a few have been caught on video.
Yeah.
They just about always go for the calf.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what predators do.
Exactly.
You go for something that's not going to hurt you. That's right. Yeah.
Even tigers. In my books, I've got photographs of tigers, as powerful as they are, still killing a young calf.
Yeah. Because
it's enough.
Well, it's also the fact that, the exchange can be, the animal, the predator doesn't want to get something that could potentially hurt it. So it's going to go for something that it can easily overpower, easily outrun, easily do everything it can. That's what you do. You go for the easier target. So yeah, that makes sense.
And there is no other natural predator other than eagles, and eagles certainly would take some calves. There have been seen, I've actually spoken to people who had direct observations of eagles trying to pick up calves and found they were too heavy and dropping them.
Jesus.
But are eagles likely to be a major predator on sambar? I don't think so. So the biggest predator we've got is humans.
Yeah.
But what humans need to be able to do to be effective on something as smart as a sambar hind is actually be educated, well educated, to understand their behaviour, know the chinks in the armour, know how to hunt them and how not to hunt them if you want to be effective. If you don't have the knowledge to hunt these deer, you're just going to be a bushwalker with a rifle, spook and shoot. How do I know? So many people, so many guys who come and do my training course, I ask them why they're doing the course. Well, I don't even need to tell them. Ask them, they tell me. I'm coming to do the course, Errol, because I'm sick of spooking deer. I never get a shot. All I see is a rear end if I see anything. The hinds are just so smart. But getting back to your question about the comparison with red deer and sambar, well, they're totally different species. Red deer are a herd animal, as are fallow, elk. Sambar are definitely nothing like a herd animal.
Oh, okay.
They only live in small groups of 2s and 3s. Now, typically your group of sambar is a mature hind, her calf at foot, and her yearling from the year before. Then you might have the young 2.5-year-old stag also hanging around at times. And then occasionally, when she's in estrus, a big stag will be there.
Yeah.
But mostly you got maybe 5 deer in that group. And Max Downs, a wildlife biologist who wrote the Forest Deer Project report, 1982, he called them antisocial. They were socially intolerant. And certainly I've seen absolute examples of that, where when a hind with a calf is approached by another mature hind with an older calf, maybe almost at juvenile's age, meaning 5 to 6 months, she will approach that other hind and run at it and bite it. And if it doesn't run away far enough, it'll run at it again. I've actually got this on video, and the photos of that are in the Hunt Smart book as well. So they're socially intolerant. So you've got this very small group. And the thing about the sambar is, unlike chital that have a symbiosis with langur monkeys in India, so cheetah are totally different. They're another herd animal like red deer, huge herds, 100 animals. But they don't do their own sentry duty. They have, it's called the sentry duty of 100 eyes, anti-predator strategy of 100 eyes, plus langur monkeys. So they're under the trees with the langur monkeys, also keeping watch. So leopards are easily notified of danger of a stalking predator. Sambar are totally different. Sambar don't have a symbiosis with any other creature to alert them to danger. They are totally responsible for their own anti-predator strategy, their own sentry. So the sambar hind, and who's it fall upon? The sambar hind, not the stag. The hind's role in life, as in all females, mothers, is a protection, to have the young, protect the young, raise the young. The stag's role is totally different. His role is simply to breed those females, and constantly also not just breed them, but he helps to synchronize their estrus, bring them into estrus with his behavior, his sex pheromone, signposting, wallowing, preaching, all involves spreading his sex pheromones, which bring the females into estrus. So he's got this role. Plus, he has to go from one group to the other looking for hinds in estrus. Whereas in your northern hemisphere species, he's roaring, the red stag's roaring, drawing the herd together, right? The fallow deer is trotting, calling all the females into his lek as they come into estrus. They're coming into his lek, typically under a big gum tree on a high point, and then he serves them. They're coming to him. It's totally different with sambar. The big sambar stag has to walk long distances, home ranges of 8 Ks by 2 K. That's been determined by trail camera photos here. Jimmy Lay shot one, and there was a trail camera photo of that same stag, absolutely matching antlers, architecture, ears, head. It was shot 8 Ks away. radio collaring a Sambar in St. Vincent Island, Florida. This booklet was studied with the comparative study with white-tailed deer, showed the home range there in undulating coastal country was 7 k's by 1 k for an 8 to 9-year-old stag. So these Sambar stags are moving long distances, and all they're responsible for is the breeding. The hinds have very small home ranges, less than half the home range of a big mature stag, and so all they're responsible for is looking after the young. Now, that leads to another interesting point. Because they evolved in India and Sri Lanka and other parts of South Asia over the last, the fossil records show they've evolved for at least 12,000 years with tigers and leopards. Now, before the proliferation of firearms and habitat destruction and motor vehicles, there was an estimated 100,000 tigers roaming South Asia. Each tigress with 2 cubs, wildlife biologists have estimated, needs 50 Sambar a year to survive. And then wildlife biologists like George Sharla, author of Deer and the Tiger, found that each tiger had somewhere between 10 to 20 attempts to make each kill.
Wow.
So when you got 100,000 tigers, each taking 1 Sambar about every week and having to make 10 to 20 attempts to do so, you can see that Sambar were absolutely harassed by tigers and predators and leopards as well, of course. So what's that done? That has just absolutely finally honed the senses of Sambar, but in particular Sambar hinds. They're the ones responsible for looking after the young. There's almost no anecdotal evidence of stags looking after the young, but there's endless evidence of Sambar hinds looking after the young, even to the point where leopards have seized their calf. They've tried to beat them off. I had an example where my English pointer snuck in on a very young calf, a week old, and it was hidden in cover. And at the time, the mother was up the face above me, feeding, or may have been bedded. But when my English pointer snuck in, right in on this calf, it squealed like in most incredible volume. It was unbelievable. You know, you hear a rabbit squeal, that was nothing compared to this calf. It was amazing. But what happened was that hind came flying off that hill, a bat out of hell, straight at the dog. Now, that morning, and here's the thing, I'd gone out 4 previous mornings to shoot a hind for meat, and they all had calves, so I didn't shoot it. I remember saying to Lynn this morning, I said, honey, if I see a hind with a calf this morning, I don't care how young it is, I'm going to shoot both of them. And that's exactly what happened. She came flying out of the hill. It was a double rise, bang, bang. I just shot both of them. But it just shows you how aggressive a Sambar hind is in protecting its young. There's another example, a classic, where hound hunters, a centraling hound, had caught a young Sambar calf and was holding it on the ground, you know, like a Labrador holds a ball. But that calf was absolutely squealing. And now, at this point, a hunter, one of the hound hunters, turns up. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, out of the bush, races this Sambar hind and smashes that hunter, flattens him, flails him. And another hunter came up, fortunately for the hunter on the ground getting flailed, and actually just stuck the barrel against her chest and shot her. Sambar hinds are fierce defenders of their young, absolute fierce. When do we ever hear of a Sambar stag doing that? Never heard of. Not one example. So we have these highly protected mothers who have had to protect their young through evolution, through thousands and thousands of years. So what that's done is develop those parts of the brain responsible for each sense, highly developed it. Now, to understand that, how that happens, this is the best book I've read on the subject, How the Brain Changes Itself by Dr. Norman Doidge. A fascinating book. You might get the idea from all the marks that I've spent a bit of time reading it.
Now, this is general. This is a book about brain habits in general. It's not focused on deer. It's just brains in general, I'm assuming.
It's actually mostly focused on what caused it to be written is strokes in humans and how the stroke destroys parts of the brain. So how could they help these people with strokes redevelop their brain? Or in fact, could they? And what they found was through constant focused stimulation, they could actually considerably repair parts of brain destroyed by strokes. But in this book, a lot of what they talk about is the research done on the brains of animals. So a lot of this neuroscience that was used to understand the human brain after strokes and could it be redeveloped came from other research into stimulating learning in animals, such as training gun dogs for the blind, training dogs for the blind, for example. I don't think the blind would probably be using gun dogs, although the Labrador is a gun dog, after all. So
maybe some issues with that, yeah.
So this is the thing about hinds. So what am I getting at here? I'm getting at how hard they are to hunt. And that's why you'll see so many hinds, I think. And as a result, when we ran our magazine, I wrote this article, Sambar's brain, how it developed. And in writing that article, I just drew absolutely heavily on this book because it's just so right. And so what the book's saying is when you stimulate a part of a brain constantly and it's totally focused, that part of the brain develops and continues to develop. Now, nothing will stimulate the part of a brain than a predator that's trying to kill an animal. Its brain will be focused, or trying to kill its young. And one of the 10 A's is things that wire together, neurons that fire together, wire together. Now, it's well known to me that the Sambar have a trisensory lock, hearing, smell, sight, particularly for movement. So when they suspect a predator, they have this trisensory lock that just goes, all senses are locked. Now that's high stimulation. This is what Doidge is talking about, that is necessary and will develop that parts of those brains. But even more so, if those senses or neurons fire together, as in a trisensory lock, they're even more stimulated. Parts of the brain are even more developed. So then the next thing I think about is, well, then is this just learned only in the individual animal? Or is this actually passed on in DNA, this ability, this enlarged brain, this gene for enlarged brain, if you like? And so Richard Dawkins, The Greatest Show on Earth, so I was reading about him. I was reading his book. And I've incorporated what he had to say in my article here. And that is, he believes that these traits are passed on the DNA. So they are passed on to the offspring. So what we've ended up with is just an absolutely incredibly difficult deer to hunt. And unlike the stag who is full of testosterone, the hind doesn't show bravado or stupidity when faced with a predator. The hind will be out of there if she can, and the predator calls, she's gone, and she leaves the rest out of that spot. And here's the other thing I've noticed: when she bolts, she's so much faster than a big ponderous stag. It's just almost ridiculous. When I've seen hinds bolt, they're almost when I spooked them from very close range, which unfortunately I've done many times, they're so fast they're almost a blur. When I've spooked huge 340, 50 estimated kilo stags from 30 yards, done it a number of times too, unfortunately, they're almost ponderous. You can almost remember each footstep. You remember exactly where they went, headed for the saddle, onto a game trail, over the saddle. That was just easy to recall, but not the hind.
But you see that behaviour in most herd animals. Most recently, I was hunting feral goats, and if you hit a mob, the billy and the goats start, you start shooting, the goats start moving, the billy will always cut away from the mob. He'll find other goats, he'll find other breeders, he'll come back. It's and the same with when we were at Barrabow with the pigs. When you hit the mob of pigs, they run. If you wanted to know, if you're looking at a mob of pigs and they run, it's the boar that cuts the other direction. He goes, oh, they're going that way, I'll go this way, I'll get away from them, and I'll come back to them later. So that idea that that the stag is basically primarily concerned with just making more deer, and not concerned about the herd or the pack is you see that replicated in lots and lots of animals.
It seems the difference to what Errol's talking about here is the billy and the pigs, the boar, they do socialise with the mob.
Yeah.
Whereas the
stag, I only think they socialise for purely unsocial reasons, if you get what I mean.
Well,
I don't think they hang around them because they like them. I think they hang around them because they're opportunistic and they're hanging around. They're hanging around because they're waiting for sows to come on and things like that. So they're not predacious, but they're certainly opportunistic in regards to their fellow kind. You do see, goats are matriarchal. I'm assuming that pigs are matriarchal from what I've observed. Reds are certainly matriarchal. Fallow, I'm assuming they are. I haven't seen that as much. I must admit, I haven't seen fallow in those kind of. I haven't been in those kind of places where you see big groups of fallow. Most of the fallow I've shot is forest fallow, so they tend to be different. I have seen them in certain instances, but generally not. But when you can observe the deer, you generally notice that the herd animals are often matriarchal in their structure, and the male is more opportunistic, so we're hanging around or trying to drive behaviour.
But again, Mark, I've had quite a lot of observation of wild goats, and even where they're Sambar, I've seen herds of 50 wild goats. The block I used to own, we'd have a herd of 50 turn up. They're very different to Sambar. Sambar, as I said earlier, you're only talking 3 or 4 animals. And when I saw the herd of 50 goats turn up, there was always a heap of billies there. You're not going to see that in Sambar. You simply don't see it. It's a different scenario. I don't think, quite frankly, that's comparable. The Sambar stag, well, the Sambar stags are moving through from one small group. So what you've got, rather than have this large herd of fallow, 30, 100 animals, 30, 50 red deer, 50 goats, as I've seen a number of times, you've just got 2 or 3, 4, maybe 5, 6 hinds. And they've got a home range of about 600 acres. So 2 Ks by a K. And they're very loyal to that home range. It's well known. You can't drive Sambar hinds out of their home range. Hound hunters talk about it all the time. The hinds just run in circles. It's been proven with whitetail deer. Radio-collared whitetail deer chased by hounds in Georgia, written about in Deer and Deer Hunting magazine. Again, they couldn't chase whitetail does out of their home range. They just ran in circles. So you've got them tied to this small area. So, and they're only going to have one calf. They're only going to come into estrus once a year for 3 days. So you've got this big mature stag. He might be 8 to 12-year-old. So he's going from one group, small group, to the next small group, to the next small group, to the next small group. So you just got these small groups. That's how the Sambar population is comprised. Just a totally different concept to herd animals, and even cheetal deer, which again are a herd animal.
Can I take you back to one of the first parts of this conversation? We were talking about you were talking about how hunters had reported seeing 20 or 30 hinds or animals in small groups as they were walking or hunting, yet they weren't seeing any volume of stags. I want to explore that a little bit more again. If the stags are being pushed, a stag goes through its yearling phase and then it gets pushed off by its mum, and then it becomes solitary and finds its own little group or its own harem that it's got to look after or follow around. Is there any thoughts to the fact that we're not seeing as many stags because they are on their own and they're harder to spot? I'm just trying to. It blows my mind that 50% of the animals are gone, and it can't just be due to hunters. I'm sure there's got to be a bit more to that, I think.
Look, there's no doubt. There's a lot more to it. Spotlighting and thermaling, there's a hell of a lot to do with it. They are just vulnerable to spotlights. Vulnerable, and thermaling, they have no protection from thermaling whatsoever. And thermaling isn't just nighttime. It's well known that the biggest trade in gun shops now in Victoria is selling thermals.
Oh, I know, and they're an expensive
fellow was in
item.
the local gun shop the other day, and he wanted to go and buy a box of ammo, and he said, "Errol, I couldn't get served." He said everyone was in there being shown thermals. So all wanted to see thermals. And so it's well known thermals are being used for daytime shooting, hunting. No, I'm going to call it daytime hunting, killing. It's not hunting. So we'll go back to this psychic. And people say, I read on Facebook, people are saying it's so they can you've got to get so many kills now to get yourself on Facebook and keep yourself relevant on Facebook. And no one's interested in a hind because that doesn't count. It's got to be a stag. And look, when people do my training course, I send them out to spots after they do the course, good spots, well away from towns, way out in the wood. And out there at night, the thermalists come and shoot where they're camped. And the guys get up in the morning and there's gut piles there. Fresh gut piles. That's how bad it is. And it's when I was guiding 24 years ago for 5 years, I found a huge number of good spots. Way out from Benambra, way out from Omeo. But every guys I've told to go there from a training course will report back, it's been smashed by spotlighters. gut piles, dead deer. We've even got a situation where guys hunting Lake Dartmouth are saying they're seeing carcasses just left in the water. And guys who just did my last training course came back along the Tambo River to Bansal, said they counted 12 deer lying on the water edge of the Tambo River. There's just what's happening out there isn't just hunting; it's thrill kill at night and no enforcement.
And you think they're potentially just shooting what they see and then inspecting it later. If it's not what they wanted, they move on to the next. Is that the theory there?
Well, often, the stag's head is removed, of course. This is well known. A lot of before thermaling, a lot of the deer that were found were headless. So they're always stags, and they're headless. There's no doubt they've been shot illegally by thermaling, nighttime and even daytime.
So is thermals? So what's the legality with thermals in Victoria?
They're illegal. They've always been illegal. But now GMA have put up a proposal that they testing the water as to whether or not what hunters think about them becoming legal for daytime. And on the Sambar Stalkers forum recently, just this week, there was a lot of posts and a lot of hunters bitterly opposed to the idea because they were saying it's not hunting. You might as well just go out and spotlight. This is not hunting. What can hide from a thermal? Here's the point about thermals. The body temperature of a sambar is the same as humans, 36 to 37 degrees. A lot of the hunting's done here in the cold weather, especially the mornings. The morning might only be 5 degrees. You got the variation of 32 degrees. The deer's going to stand out. You can't miss the deer. Now, on the training course the other day, we had great trouble finding the deer with binoculars, and in the end, one of the blokes found it after, glassing for nearly an hour. He found it just an ear moving. Right? This is real challenging hunting. If we had a thermal, we would have found that deer immediately. There would have been no more than 5-6 degrees on that face where the deer was. So, look, what I am about and passionate about is that we are hunters and we stay hunters, that we don't become cheats. Hunting is well known to bring us in contact with nature. There's a lot of arguments, books written about hunting brings you in contact with nature in so many ways. You're out there, you're actually hunting, listening, watching. You're learning about what birds are there. You're learning about, or you should be learning, how the deer respond to the weather, how they respond to food, how during the seasons the sun's higher in the sky or lower in the sky, how it's hitting this spot over here in the spring but doesn't hit there in the winter, why the deer are there and not here. It brings you into the reasons people take up sambar hunting is because it's so challenging, it's addictive. When I was in the infantry, 9-rail, trained for Vietnam, Christ, I used to go out to Gundawindi. I'd never hunted pigs before. I could bowl pigs without a problem. Last time I went pig hunting, me and my mate shot 50 pigs in 48 hours and did nothing with them. And I said to my mate, got to be more to hunting than this, mate. Last time I went pig hunting, I took up sambar hunting. And what I found was so incredibly more difficult, so challenging, but also intriguing. And so what happens is people take up sambar hunting. It's so intriguing and challenging. It's addictive. Now, we don't want to ruin that by legalising thermals that make it easy because, there it is. A friend said to me recently he'd bought one and he suggested I get one because there was this big standing in the bush just 60 yards away and he couldn't see it. But with the thermal, you couldn't miss it. So, that's the difference. And, it's a divisive subject for sure, but I can tell you, I've been listening and reading, I've been reading the comments on the forums, and I'm so happy to say so many hunters are bitterly opposed to having legalising thermals for daytime. They want the challenge. They want to actually be a hunter.
Now, I don't want to antagonise you here. This question, this will provoke. I'm not sure how this will be answered, but if we go back to the subject of the evening of needing to shoot more hinds,
Yep.
not because they're the smarter animal or the bigger challenge, but because taking more hinds out is better for herd management. We've got population issues. You talked about starving, or very hungry hinds that were very thin because the populations were overgrown. Under the right circumstances, thermals will help that job. Now, I'm not advocating for them, but is there a place for them in herd management? Or is the concern that if you open it to some, then those that won't use them for, good purposes will ruin it for all? Is that the concern for you?
I think it's a concern for most of the blokes who posted on the Sambar Stalkers forum. Also, they're concerned about safety of other hunters.
Yeah.
And we've only got to have one hunter shot. And God, the media will never stop about trying to ban hunting, get hunters out of national parks where we're currently allowed to hunt, in case we then shoot a non-deer hunter, another bush user.
You think people will shoot at a thermal blob rather than identifying their target?
Well, the reason they can't actually see their target without a thermal is because they can't see it. It's so well camouflaged, so difficult to see. So the thermal is going to show some part of this animal, and there's some guy pointed out in the forum, maybe my butt that's sticking out. May not be a deer. The thing in firearm safety is deer hunter safety is you should be identifying 3 parts of the animal: the head, a leg, and a rump, or 2 legs and the head. What are we going to identify with the thermal for sure as the animal? We know what it is. We know what it is when we're looking at it without thermals, with our naked eye or binocular, because we're seeing the tone, the colour, the texture, the absolute shape. We know all this. We're familiar with this. What are we familiar with? The glow of body heat.
Yeah, but are you familiar with how a thermal image? Because you don't, with a thermal look, and it's important to mention that thermals are completely legal in New South Wales State Forest hunting.
Yeah,
they're completely legal, and a thermal gives you much more than a glow of body heat. A thermal gives you, at times an incredibly detailed image of what that animal is. So, for me, the rule is if you don't know what it is, you don't shoot it.
Yeah.
No matter how you first identify it, if you identify it through the naked eye or you identify it through a thermal, if you're unsure of what that is that you're looking at, you don't shoot it. And unless your thermal is mounted on you've got scope mounted thermal. Most people are using a monocular style thermal. The transfer between the shot and the observation's different anyway. So you observe it with a monocular, but then you go to the rifle, and unless your optics is thermal, you don't get that thermal image when you go to your rifle. So I think it's important to say that, one, thermals are legal in New South Wales, and people, I use them, we use them in state forest situations. and there is plenty of other people who use them too, quite legally during the daylight. And the other thing is, having used them during the day, they're not this kind of magical device that makes all the animals in the forest jump out at me type thing, while game has heat, so do rocks, so do trees, so do all sorts of things. So that they don't allow you to see animals just like that, unless of course you're in a paddock at night time, where they do let you see animals just like that. But often in the forest position, you don't. You don't get that kind of, oh, there it is, there's the deer right there, I can see it right now. You don't seem to get that with thermals. They're not. I think that's important to mention, that they're not just here's the easy way to shoot a deer. Unless, of course, you're sitting on the bonnet of a car in the middle of a dark paddock, then certainly that they're a lot easier there.
Yeah, and the only things I'd add to that are there's various different grades of thermal. You can get a cheap thermal which will give you a pretty distorted image, and there's concerns about that. If you're not up nice and close, you're not going to get a crisp image, and identification is hard. You might notice that it's a mammal, but like you said, if it's the middle of the park and it's someone that's just got to their campsite and they're crawling around trying to bang on a tent peg, then they're probably going to be the shape of a pig, right? And there's danger there. There's also a really slippery slope. Again, I'm going to say it again. I'm not advocating for these things, but there's some things that we've got to be really careful about discussing, and that is, if a hunter that is usually very careful in identifying his target goes and buys a thermal, it's not going to make them careless. I don't think. They still, hunters that have gone through education, hunters that are out there in the bush now, if you can trust them with a scope and a gun not to shoot at something that's unidentified, I think we'd have to be fair and reasonable about them putting the same care and effort into identifying a target with or without a thermal. Now, there's always a clown out there. There's no doubt about that. Does a thermal make it more risky for us with that device in their hands? Maybe, and there's a problem there. But it's a really slippery slope by saying to the public, we don't want these because it will make it more dangerous. We're kind of saying the hunting community are a dangerous group, and we don't want to be saying those sorts of things either. So it's a difficult one. But I completely understand what you're saying about fair chase. And fair chase, those conversations would have come up some years ago when, a magnified scope got put on a rifle, and then an auto ranging scope got put on a rifle. I went through a period of time where I tried thermals in the state forest, not because I wanted to take them up, but because we were lucky enough to get a loan of a few different devices to see what they would be like. And because our podcast is about education and what you can and what you can't do, we felt that it was a good idea to pick up those devices and see what they were like as a hunting tool. And I can tell you, I walked around in state forest for quite a few days with a thermal or two, and I didn't see one deer in the thermal. I spent a lot of time looking at kangaroos that I thought looked like deer heads, and wasting a lot of time looking at marsupials instead of chasing deer. And eventually I put it back in my pocket. And I've said it a couple of times on the podcast. I actually put it away because I go into the bush, like you were talking about, to sort of connect with nature and to be part of this process and to enjoy being away. The last thing I need to do is put my head in a device like I do when you're at home on your phone. We're all got our heads in our phones these days. I didn't want to do that in the bush. So I sort of put it away. But you know what makes me get more deer than anything? And that's my dog. All right. And I kind of was listening to your comments earlier about, is it hunting if you're using a thermal, if you've got this absolute advantage over the animal by seeing heat? Well, man, I get more advantage over my dog than I do over a thermal. And I kind of feel like under that description, I'm cheating as well. So it's a like you said, it's a very divisive conversation, and it comes from many angles, I think. So
I think that and and I also think this is an argument as old as hunting. So I'm sure that
Yeah, for sure.
in the cave, as the guy was sharpening the stick, and the guy walked in the cave with a bow, he said, "Hey, what's going on here? It's an arms race. You guys have got these things that can throw that stick further than I can throw this stick," and away it went.
But the use of the dog is as old as hunting. The
It
use
is.
of use of the thermal is just the latest new technological gadget.
Yeah.
But the dog is as old as hunting, and I have no problem with that. That is a part of the natural progression of hunting. The thermal isn't. But I think there's another point though that we're missing, and that is where we've got this excess of hinds or excess of deer. It's all places where we're not allowed to hunt.
Yeah, it's spread.
That's where it is.
Yeah,
we shouldn't miss that point. The Snowy River National Park can't hunt there. Where have they been? Parks been shooting them all because of an excess of deer. Snowy River National Park, Bogong National Park can't hunt there. Where are they shooting them with helicopters? Bogong. Where are they other culling? All around the coastal areas of Victoria. Why? We're not allowed to hunt there. The ones at Eildon walking out the paddock, why were they there? Because they're all farmlet activities, all small farmlets where the deer are living in a whole bunch of small forested farmlets. But the owners not allowing hunting, so the deer are building up, not allowed to hunt there. The large number of deer excess exceeding the carrying capacity is mostly happening in these places. It's not happening in the state forests where we've been allowed to hunt. Nevertheless, the number of hinds, even in those places, is possibly much higher than the number of stags, way out of kilter, because I think it's well known. It's been well documented anecdotally that stags are being targeted in those places by fair chase hunters, but also in particular by spotlight hunters in the past, and now spotlight and thermal hunters.
Yeah.
So if we get to the point that we're saying, okay, hinds, we've got to put hinds on, I suppose we're saying it's important from a carrying capacity, or to properly manage carrying capacity. We're obliged to knock over hinds. We've got to help with the balance.
Correct.
One of the challenges, if we go to why this is, and this is the interesting challenge, is that whilst things like, goats and pigs and rabbits and foxes, and we seem to have no real problem with stacking and whacking those things.
Yeah.
For some reason, hunters have a real problem with stacking and whacking deer. And I don't mean sambar deer, all deer. This is as you know, Ian, we've spoken about
higher order.
This is
animal.
This is a difficult conversation for people to come to grips with, not because of anything other than we're talking about shooting deer, and people don't like, certainly from the vast majority of people that we communicate with in the wider hunting community, who are not doing this professionally, do not like stacking deer. I, in fact, got in trouble in England for not stacking deer. I went out with colours for one, and I shot one deer, and I went, "Oh, great one!" And they looked at me and go, "What are you doing?" Keep shooting type thing. So, this idea about, so how do we reconcile that? That's because I actually think that's a bigger challenge for more people. The bigger challenge is how do I shoot more than one, knowing that at least one of them is going to be laying on the ground? I'm not going to be able to take out both. I can't process meat. I'm going to have to leave something dead in the forest.
Okay. If you're talking about sambar hunting in Victoria, hunting sambar, there's not going to be an issue about stacking and whacking them. The issue is actually trying to actually shoot one.
Okay.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
I hear it. Look, I've walked the walk on this. You know, I'm not a mug when it comes to shooting. I was in the infantry. I trained with all small arms. I was one of the top 2 shots in my platoon. When I started sambar hunting, I took all the advice. I bought a 375 Holland & Holland. Certainly there wasn't the number of deer around that there is now. But because I had no knowledge, I was just a bushwalker with a rifle. It was spook and shoot, basically, and I averaged 1 deer every 12 days. Now, what I'm hearing from guys constantly, because I'm constantly in contact with hunters, because they're ringing me about my books, they're ringing me about booking a course. Their problem is they can't shoot 1 deer. You're not, and I'm not going to be arrogant here, but I think I just got to make this point very clear. Sambar are that far above the other species for hunting. They're about 2 out of 10, and sambar are 12. You can't compare. I've taken my young boys out and shot goats. Like, so easy. I had no trouble shooting pigs. Like, they were stupid. Sambar, I've gone through trying to explain this. They are so bloody smart. Nothing compares. If this wasn't true, then why in wild animals of central India would the conservative forest, A.A. Dunbar Brander, rave about how hard sambar were to hunt? And why would he say, for any other species, you could go out and in two weeks get a trophy. But for sambar, you're going to take at least several months. And then Angus, the Colonel, Alexander Inglis Robertson Glassford, author, Musings of an Old Shikari. He was in the infantry, stationed at Ellispur near Hyderabad. And those infantry officers who were proud infantry soldiers who did it hard. They wouldn't hunt tigers. They were too easy. They loved hunting sambar because they were the ultimate challenge. There was nothing else like them. Why? And I'm just going to have to go to this because this is such an important subject to really make the point. The problem with killing sambar ain't stacking them, mate. It's actually trying to actually shoot one.
Yeah, okay. Errol, mate, okay, I extend that, but the question is, what do you, if I'm happy to bump, if I'm down there with a group of guys and we bump this 50.
If you're what?
You know how you said you've seen herds of 50 of them? I think we still need to address that.
Hang on.
No, 2 and 3, but over time.
No,
let's address the question. But mate, I think the question.
No, I'll just answer this because you're missing the point. The 30 were in areas you weren't allowed to hunt. That's the point.
Yeah.
In the areas where you're allowed to hunt, these deer are absolutely constantly wired. They have an alert system where they can relax or go from high alert to low alert. They don't live in a landscape of fear, but they're so intelligent, they work out how alert they need to be. One bump from a hunter and they go to high alert. They can just, after a month, go back to relax. One more bump, they go to high alert. They're highly flexible in their sensory system, in their alert system. But on that point, I just want to read what Sharla had to say when he studied animals in India. The sambar respond to potential danger more readily than the chital and barasingha, frequently raising their tails and even barking after perceiving something which the other species nearby have either failed to detect or simply ignored. The sight or scent of a tiger is a common cause for alarm. Now, while I was over in India studying sambar and other species, I was fortunate to get this photo. Here's a sambar hind and a stag at a waterhole. High alert. The stag's eyes are bulging out of his sockets, looking backwards for predators. and the hind is on high alert, right? High alert. Now, right beside him, at the same waterhole, is exactly what Charlotte talked about. Here's the cheetle. The cheetle. Totally relaxed. They're not aware for danger at all. They look totally unconcerned. And they're standing right alongside the sambar that are clearly at high alert. It might be hard to understand that this species can be so superior, but here's another reason why they are. It's been clearly established by wildlife biologists in India, Dr. A.I.J. John Singh, who's done a lot of study in the sambar. My friend Dr. Gobind Bawaja, who wrote the book Tracking Tigers in Ranthambore, and he is the director of national parks at Ranthambore, Sariska, and he's now a head of Forest Service in India. He did a lot of research. This is what they found. Of all the animals in India that sambar could prey upon, Barasingha, blue nilgai.
Sorry, what could prey upon? Sorry,
Tigers.
That tigers could prey upon. Tigers. Nilgai, Barasingha, cheetal, other types of deer, blackbuck antelope. The preferred prey of tigers was sambar, and there was sambar were far more highly represented in the number of kills they found than any other species. So it's just another reason why the sambar have developed this to become so elusive and difficult to hunt. So what I would like to see, instead of going to thermals, is some proper, more advanced, more available education for sambar hunters. Because if you don't have the knowledge, you're just a bushwalker with a rifle. If you've got the knowledge, you can turn the tables on these deer. If you work out what they do, when they do it, what their weaknesses are, then you can shoot them unalarmed, one shot, one kill, ethical, no running shots. One of the things I teach on my training course, never shoot it at a moving sambar. It's easy to make them stop. This is how you do it. Doesn't matter if they're 25 yards, 300 yards, you make them stop with a shot. And this is how you do it. But that's providing, of course, you found them unalarmed. So what I teach is how to find them unalarmed. And by applying what I call overlays, which are all about what they do, especially in where you'll find them in various weather conditions, you can actually narrow down where they're going to be, the 10% of total forest. You can narrow that down. If you don't do that, if you don't get up in the morning, look at the temperature, what's the weather, work out where they're going to be according to the weather, and you can do that. You can work out where they're going to be. If you just get up, put your backpack on and take off, you're just going to spook deer. Spook. Guys come and do the training course. Guys just finished one. Went away 2 days. Shot a deer straight away, 2 days.
There's no doubt that the education provided works. Frank joined your course not long ago, and it completely changed the way that he viewed the landscape that he was hunting. And I can certainly attest to be one of those guys that drove down 2 or 3 times the 16 hours to get to sambar hunting, walked around the bush bumping deer for 2 weeks. So there's no doubt that the right education helps. I think if we go back to the other thing I'll say is I don't think anyone's going to disagree with you that sambar have one of the more elusive deer to hunt. The description that you gave earlier about how sambar hinds live in very small groups, they don't have the 100 eyes to protect them. They've become far more heightened and alert because one mother has to look after her offspring on her own, if not with one other. Evolution, all of those things make them a far more superior animal to some of their cousins. if you want to put it that way. I think the question at hand, though, is assuming I've done the training course and I understand where to find deer, how do we educate the hunter that is capable, all right, to whack and stack a few more deer? What are the reasons why a hunter should shoot more hinds, all right, when we're not used to this conversation about shooting and leaving them on the ground? I opened the podcast earlier by saying we should shoot more hinds because if we can prove to the authorities that hunters are doing more than they need to be doing to control the population, then maybe they'll reconsider the helicopter culls. Now, that probably won't happen anyway. Let's just probably be realistic about that. But if there was a place for hunters to play to cull the population out to a point that the government was handy, do you think that there's more to this conversation that can be had with the hunter to help them feel like, using the term again, whacking and stacking them is an ethical thing? Because hunters don't like that. I would never want to shoot a deer and just leave it because I can't carry it out.
If you're hunting,
under the understanding that I'm doing the herd a favour and hunting a favour, then maybe that conversation is a healthy one to have. I think that's what I'm trying to get to.
Ian, I understand what you're saying, but the idea that any hunter is going to go out and whack and stack sambar doing it ethically is just not going to happen. They are too smart for that. And so,
Errol,
I just like to say this.
Can I just get in,
Yep.
Errol?
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, and I think there's clarity in that. But we've got a question here, and the question is, there's too many hinds. Okay, so that seems to be the topic of conversation. There's too many hinds. And one of the problems that the people who listen to this podcast have is reconciling the fact that they may have to shoot more deer than they can carry out. That's a problem. That's a problem for people. I don't feel comfortable shooting 2 deer because I can only carry out 1 deer. Okay? So if we put everything aside and say from a purely ethical consideration here, as hunters who care about the population and care about managing the population, what would you say, notwithstanding that they might not be able to do it? But let's put that aside for a sec. If a group of us go down there and we happen to spring a couple of hinds, we just happen to be incredibly lucky and everything falls in place and the opportunity presents itself. Okay? What can we say to those guys so they actually help out here and maybe do something about reducing the hind population?
Well,
so
I believe.
Let's get to that point.
Right. I believe if they are capable of doing that, those guys will want to bring out all the meat. They won't be leaving them there. That's what I believe.
Okay.
They won't be leaving them lying in the bush. Because no matter which way we theorise and hypothesise about it, they're never going to shoot that many that they can't handle what they shoot. Because, look, when these deer bolt, they're like lightning. They evolved beating tigers. The slow ones got eaten. They didn't live to pass on their genes for being slow. When I say when a hind bolts, it's like you can almost not remember where it ran. It's so fast. They must be one of the fastest creatures on Earth over 100 metres.
Especially in the scrub. Especially in the bush. Yeah.
They're unbelievable. And you're only going to put up a group of maybe 3 or 4. And what they do is they splatter. Then they run straight to a game trail. As soon as they splatter, they've got that advantage they need over the tiger, the leopard. Then they run straight to the game trail, which they know. and they know the game trail runs straight to the easiest way out of there, which is normally a saddle. But you're not going to be stacking and smacking and stacking sambar. I would suspect, not even with a spotlight. Look,
Unless it's
something.
out on farmland, yeah.
I'll tell you what. When I was guiding, I had exclusive access to this property, and it used to get heavily spotlighted before I got access. Was vulnerable to it. So, but I used to put the spotlight out at night. Think, I'll count how many deer there are. Do you know? As soon as that spotlight went on, they're just gone. They're bolted. You wouldn't have got one shot. That's how heavily the spotlight it was. Now, I'm just going to get back here to why hunters, the untrained hunter, he's actually contributing to why sambar are so hard to kill. I have blokes do the training course, and I'll send them to a great spot. This was before they got smashed by spotlighters. They'd go out there, and I'd say to them, but whatever you do not take your mates back there who haven't been trained. Because what sambar love is the hunter who walks everywhere. They know where he is. His scent's blowing all over the place. They're just patterning you. You're just a mug. I said, don't take your mates there. I've taught you how to hunt low impact. Go out there and hunt low impact. Use the overlays. Narrow down where they're going to be. You get to the spot where they aren't, and you watch that spot. Or you go and ambush those chinks in the armour, which are clearly identifiable. There are certain chinks in the armour for hinds and stags. And you go and ambush the chink. If you do that, you'll kill deer. Take your mates there who are untrained and walk all over the place. You just spooked these deer. They become nocturnal. They go into hiding. They go on high alert. That's when you can't shoot them. That's what stops you from being able to hunt them. So what we've got out there, I might have sold 15,000 copies of the books. I might have put 500 people through training courses. There's 56,000 people licensed. How many people are actually trained to hunt sambar, the most elusive game animal in the world? All they're doing is training the sambar how to avoid them. That's why we can't shoot hinds. The hinds are smarter than the stags. I'll tell you a story. I commuted with a guy recently. He'd shot a 27-incher, but he put a post up on a forum. So he communicated with me about it. And what happened was he admitted he was actually trying to stalk a hind. And the hind barked and bolted. Then this 27-incher walked out of the bush and stood 20 yards from him, and he shot it. Stood and stared at him. Stags are easier to kill. I could go through so many stories that we published in our magazine, and then and go through the ones when I was guiding. Every stag we published nearly in the magazine and in our books, and that my client shot, they're on their own. There was no hinds protecting them. Guys are sneaking up, finding stags, rising mature to mature stags, that's 7 to 12-year-old stags in age. They're sneaking up on them in their beds. Then they're sitting down watching them. Then they're shooting them when they feel like it. Try and do that with a hind. Stags walk so fast they can't detect predators. I've got them on video. Boom, 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 boom. They're off. They're looking for the next hinder bonk in the next gully.
It's interesting. It's a really interesting observation. The first time that I went sambar hunting, I bumped and saw a number of stags. I didn't get the opportunity to shoot at one because I'm blundering through the bush myself. But hinds, like you say, they were far more elusive. You could hear them, you get honked by them, but they were always hidden. They had us pinned pretty easily. So yeah, it's an interesting point you make.
Could I say this about hinds? I'm going to make the comparison because I've thought a lot about this problem. Why so many stags getting shot and not hinds? And when these guys ring me and want to book the course and saying, oh, all I'm doing is spooking, I don't even get a look at them, I can't get a shot. So they don't really know whether they're stags or even hinds, but I suspect they're mostly hinds. Here's the big difference. Not only are the hinds constantly looking after, because they are looking after the young, they're constantly alert. Even when they're asleep, they're only half asleep. They've only got an area about 600 acres, 2 Ks by 1 K, and they know it intimately.
Mm.
Because you might think, oh, how could they know all that area? Well, here's the point. Thane Riney in the book Management of Large Mammals, I read it and studied it. Amazing book. And what he said was, most deer and antelope only use about 40% of their usable habitat. The reason they only use 40% is because they only use those parts that service their hierarchy of needs.
Mm.
So if you've got areas with no food, areas that get baked in the summer, freezing cold in winter, they don't use them, and I can take you to spots like that. So they're only using this small amount, the small area, but they're there all the time. They know it intimately. Stags are travelling over 8 Ks, and this is proven. And when they're moving, they're in a gully, and I've seen them, several times. No hind, they're with the hinds, but there's no hind estrus. So off they go. They're going to go and find that hinds are in estrus. So they're going up the face. I've got it on video several times. They're walking so much faster than a hind would ever walk, but there's no way they can be focused on their sensors can be focused to detect the predator. Plus, not only that, they cannot know those areas as intimately as a hind knows her area. So when there's something there that doesn't belong, a hind twigs it. Something there doesn't belong. Stag doesn't twig it. He's walking too fast. And if he's not walking, here's what he's doing. He's rubbing a tree. I saw the guy the other day. They shot a stag. You know how they shot the stag? They saw the tree moving. He was rubbing the tree. But he's not only is he bringing attention to himself, but he can't detect the predator. Then he's wallowing. Again, he's distracted from his senses. Right? He's just totally distracted. Then he's preaching, standing vertical, rubbing scent, totally distracted. He's doing this sort of stuff all the time, distracted. Plus, he's got testosterone. So Homo sapien turns in front of him, and he doesn't bolt like the hind does because he's got more aggression. The hind doesn't have any. So we've got this total, men are from Mars. What's the book?
Yep. Men from Mars, women from Venus. Yep.
We've got totally different animals from the same species. One's so wide to detect predators and elude. The other one is nowhere near as wide, but much slower and much bigger to see, and much bigger target to shoot.
So, let me bring it back again. Not everyone can be trained instantly, right? There's a long process to become proficient in hunting sambar. What is the answer? We agree that there's an overpopulation of hinds, and there is going to be always a hunter out there. I mean, you just said it a minute ago. If a hunter shoots 2 or 3 of them, they're going to work to get all of that meat back. Well, I partially disagree with some of that in that a lot of hunters will backpack hunt into the backcountry to chase a bigger stag, and if they saw a hind, they're more likely to just leave it, right? Because they don't want to shoot it, because they don't want to have to carry it. It would be good to encourage hunters to a point, if they've got their stag, shoot that hind, even if they can't take it out, because it's a long way for some of these guys that are walking a long way in. But what other than everyone taking the time and doing the course, and we encourage as many people to do that as possible, how do we encourage the masses? How do we get a message out there to the Sambar hunters that are out there on the ground now to take those chances and to help with that population? Other than we're saying that there is too many hinds, and you're talking about thin animals and not enough feed for them all. There's other reasons too, right? Herd management and the like. How do we encourage them to do that?
I don't think where the Sambar are being legally hunted, I don't think the exceeding the carrying capacity is such a big issue.
Okay, it's more in the places we can't.
Without a doubt, if no one's allowed to hunt there, if there's no one's allowed to hunt the Snowy River National Park or Bogong High Plains, there's going to be an absolute excessive number of deer. And friends of mine were really pissed about them shooting the deer from the choppers in the Snowy River because they were hunting private properties adjoining the forest. But you know what? I figured they were actually doing them a favour, because by reducing the number of hinds by a significant amount, there was then going to be more food. This, by the way, this happened immediately after the fire, the 2019 fire. They helicopter shot that when there was limited cover, you see, after the fire. So, but we know that 3 to 4 years after the fire, we shoot some of the biggest trophy stags because of the nutrition that the fire produces. So, by parks significantly reducing the number of deer, and then this increased nutrition and succulent food produced by the bushfire, the guys were going to get probably bigger stags than they'd had before the shoot, before the fire, before parks went in and reduced the number, because there was going to be more food for stags to produce bigger, heavier antlers. And we do know that is actually what happens.
So do we think that the outcry of hunters, being opposed to heli shooters, do you think that's then more about, it's less about animal welfare and it's more about why can't I do it? Do you think they're just disappointed that they're spending a taxpayer's dollar to go into places that hunters can't hunt? Why don't you just let us in? Do you think that's probably more of the argument that they're having?
Maybe, but it's certainly a valid argument, a very valid argument. How come we can't hunt in there and reduce the number of deer and do it ethically instead of using taxpayers' money to fly over top and probably wound quite a few deer, then have to send in ground crews, maybe they do, maybe they don't, to finish off the wounded animals and leave all that meat there that hunters want to utilise. We have a hunter-gatherer culture developing here. It is developing. Whether the government likes it or not, and my attitude about life as 2 years has taught me, is mostly what you'll achieve is despite the government, not with the government's help. That's how I've found life.
Yeah, and there was a good news, not article. There was a broadcast that was put on socials this week about the influx of hunters that have come in the last, I guess post-COVID, that have come into gun shops that are, there's more people buying rifles now than ever, hunting rifles to get into hunting so that they can go and get their own meat from the bush. And I think that's a great thing. Where I guess I'm a little bit pessimistic about the government ever opening up more land. They seem to be taking more away than they are opening. And here we are sitting in Queensland with no public land hunting. So I kind of try and focus a little bit on the land that we do have, not the pipe dream that's out there. Although someone needs to focus on that, because if you don't push, you never get it. And potentially the science that you're talking about, or the evidence that you're seeing that says that the land that we are hunting now has the right populations, to accommodate the animals that are there, is good evidence to show the powers that be that if they expand those borders, then we can control the next piece as well. Although I get the feeling that they'd prefer them eradicated altogether, not controlled.
What isn't there, though, is the number of stags. It's way out of kilter, and it's happening because of unpoliced spotlighters and thermalists. There's no doubt about that. Look, what I'm interested in is teaching people how to hunt. And when I say hunt, I mean really get in touch with nature, understand it fully. And so, and look, this is, I can't say the truth without advertising. So I'm going to advertise this fact. When Hunters bought Volume 1, that was published in 2006, it was a game changer for them. I received so many success stories within a year from people who bought Volume 1. We sold out the first print in 9 months. People were saying, for the first time ever, I'm watching Unalarmed Sambar, and I'm picking the one I want to shoot and shooting it when I want to shoot it with a one-shot kill. I prepared a YouTube video for all the success stories, a lot of them that we got from Volume 1. Now, Volume 1 is a very simple 256-page book. It's not an in-depth, complicated training system. The Hunt Smart system.
Errol, I'm sorry, mate. I've got Volume 1. You might think it's simple, but to me it was very complex. It had heaps of information. I loved every bit of it, but to the untrained sambar hunter, it's certainly not a basic book. It's got so much information in it.
Well, it's interesting because so many people found it so easy.
I'm not saying it's hard. I'm just saying it's full of information. It's a great book. That was a compliment, by the way. I wasn't contradicting you.
The Hunt Smart system has taken it to a different level, and it's a much bigger book. Look, I don't know what the answer is. The answer to me is education, but to educate people how to hunt, they've got to be prepared to be educated. They've got to be prepared to put the time aside. But as long as we've just got 56,000 hunters walking all around the bush, spreading their scent everywhere and bumping deer and having them on full alert all the time, the chances of anyone having to worry about smacking them and stacking them, mate, this is not going to happen. Look, I've been doing this for 24 years full time. I've had areas where I used to take training courses where there was no pressure, zero. And I'd watch the behaviour of the deer. And they'd come back just after first light from the flats where they fed, and they'd walk slowly through openings, and they'd only go up to, if the sun hit the middle wagon wheel rim in winter, they'd only go to the middle wagon wheel rim. They wouldn't go to what I call the upper wagon wheel rim. They only go there if there's something blocking the sun from hitting the middle wagon wheel rim, and they'll go higher to get the sun. But then some of the people I took on the course only booked to go back and shoot the hell out of all those deer. So they did. And then what suddenly happened was these deer were coming back right on first light, not after first light. They weren't walking slowly and relaxed. They were walking quickly straight through openings. They weren't going to the middle wagon wheel rim where the sun was hitting when it was cold. They were going way up just below the ridge line. They weren't standing in openings. They're bedding in thick cover. They just totally adapt to hunting pressure. So when you got people walking all over the place, it's very difficult for hunters, for any hunter to become, well, certainly to smack and stack them. I'll have to give you An easier version of Volume 1.
Oh, I'm
The
not.
condensed
I'm not
the
a
Reader's
simple-
Digest version.
It's just stacked with good information. I don't. I
Or
think
what's the name? Audio
I
book.
would an audio book. Yeah, that'd be a
An
good
audio
idea.
book. That's what you
I
want.
would read parts of a chapter at a time, and then sit with it and digest it. It certainly wasn't a Roald Dahl book that I could, follow the tweets.
Yeah, I think the difference could be a lot of the blokes who bought the book had already been sambar hunting. Well, they had, because they said to me, for the first time, I've been able to watch unalarmed deer instead of spooking them. So they were clearly guys who'd put yards in the bush. So they had that basic understanding. Then they went to the book. And I guess that probably makes quite a big difference in being able to follow it.
No doubt. Yeah. I didn't find it difficult to follow. It was just, it had enough information to have you stop and think and ponder what you were talking about as you went through it. And that's the sign of a good book for me. You retain it a lot better if you sit and think about it.
So how are we progressing about shooting these hinds?
I'm not sure, mate. I don't think we're going to answer that question.
Mate, that's one question we really haven't answered, unfortunately.
Well, that's okay.
But the question was, should we shoot more hinds? And the question is, yes.
Yes.
But the blokes who backpack
But the caveat to that is you probably won't, though.
Well, you could if you had basic education. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, so that's it. So if the question is, is there a need to shoot more hinds? The answer is yes. The best way to execute that, though, is to make that a reality, to go from a conceptual or theoretical question to deer on the ground, is to recognise that you're going to need some help in achieving that.
I'll tell you something. I've been studying the Bushmen of the Kalahari tribe. So reading a book, The Art of Tracking, The Origin of Science. Now, as good a trackers and hunters as the Bushmen and some tribes of the Bushmen of the Kalahari were, but let me say this. In that book, it's made clear not all Bushmen of the Kalahari were good hunters.
No.
Some of them never killed a kudu in their life.
Yeah.
Some were excellent. Some were average. But there's one common denominator with all of them. None of them were born hunters, and they all had to learn how to hunt. They all had to learn.
Without a thermal.
They weren't. Yeah.
No thermals on sticks.
So one of them had a Coke bottle, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, I saw that fall out of the sky as well. Sorry, Errol, carry on.
They all had to learn. This was a point that the guy made, the author made, and he lived with them for several years. And he drew, for his book, on every anthropologist who'd gone and lived with different tribes of the Kalahari and tribes of Namibia. And he drew on all their scientific reports, and there was endless reports and other books. But they all had to learn how to hunt. Every chippy has to learn how to be a carpenter. Every plumber has to learn how to be a plumber. A policeman has to learn how to be a policeman. No one's born a hunter. If we don't get basic training, how do we become hunters, actual efficient, effective hunters, like an efficient, effective chippy or plumber or sparky or teacher? This is the big overall problem. There's this idea that we're all born hunters, so we should just get a rifle and a license and we can go out there and we're just going to nail the smartest deer on the planet. Well, hey, we're already seeing the answer to that idea. It doesn't happen. It's not happening. They're too smart and we've got no basic training. It's been a frustrating journey because I went to Germany in 1989 and watched and studied game management, gyro management, and they all undergo training. And no one had an assault rifle to hunt roe deer or red deer or wild boar. They all had bolt actions or drillings. So when I came back, I put in reports about why, as a part of firearm management, there ought to be hunter training. But of course, it didn't just fall on deaf ears. I actually got beaten to death with it. Whoever could beat me to death with that report did. People just in this country just don't want hunting. They don't want hunter training. I was on a scholarship at the Institute of Criminology, and the deputy said, "Oh, so you want all Australian hunters to be like German foresters, trained like German foresters, forest hunters?" And I looked at him and thought, well, what would be wrong with education, some level of education for hunters? But as you know, it's never happened. So what I did, I got pretty frustrated with being in the police force. So despite the rank and my easy job, 9 weeks leave, I dived off the side of the ship to go and learn myself about Sambar and learn enough to hopefully train other hunters how to hunt Sambar. That was my aim, and that's what I've been doing for 24 years.
Very good.
But
and you do it well.
Well, it's I think in the end what made me do it was the frustration of not being able to find out things because there was no training.
Last questions, Mark?
No, I think that's a good line under it, actually. That's what this whole podcast is about, helping people learn stuff. So I think that's a pretty good place to end it, it's a learning journey. So
it is.
No matter how you approach that journey and no matter how you learn, I think that's an important thing. We need to recognise that people learn differently and their journeys are all different. The idea here is that ultimately people want to be successful hunters. So if we can help them be successful in whatever they hunt and whatever takes their fancy, then we're doing a good thing.
I'd agree.
Yeah, well, I hope I haven't displayed too much frustration here at the end, but
no.
What disappoints me is governments will do nothing to help hunters. It seems quite the reverse.
Yeah. No, I think.
I think we should draw on that because that's another podcast altogether. We're going to have part 2 of that. Yes.
No, I think it's great to have you on a forum like this to discuss, debate, be challenged and challenge some of these subjects. I look forward to the next one. What I have learned today, you've probably just reaffirmed some of the things that I knew, that they are difficult animals to hunt. I've been lucky enough to hunt other deer species successfully, and I've chanced my arm at Sambar unsuccessfully a few times now. So when you say to the world who are listening that they are very difficult animals to hunt, it's the truth. They are very difficult animals to hunt. But until you go and have a go at that and teach those deer how to evade you by stomping through the bush and leaving your smell everywhere, you probably won't get the full understanding that you've tried to tell everyone this evening. But education is important, and your course is available for people, and we'll talk a bit more about that in upcoming episodes, no doubt. But it's great to have you on. So thank you.
Well, I'm here to help hunters become efficient, effective hunters to enjoy what they do.
Thank you, Errol.
That's it, mate. That seems a worthy cause.
Thank you, Ian.
Good stuff. We'll see you next time.
And good night, folks.